You're listening to Whispers in the Dark, where chilling, real-life horror stories from across America are told with haunting authenticity. If you're drawn to that creeping sense of dread, if you believe there are things lurking just beyond the veil of what we understand, then hit that subscribe button right now. Because your support is the very reason I keep releasing new videos, sharing terrifying real experiences, strange encounters, and unsettling truths that most people are too afraid to speak of. Your subscription keeps this channel alive in the dark. Tonight, we're venturing into one of the most cursed places in Michigan, Dice Road Cemetery. This ancient and eerie graveyard isn't just a resting place for the long dead, it's been the site of countless unexplainable phenomena for decades. In this video, I'll share 5 bone-chilling true encounters, sent in by those who dared to walk the grounds of Dice Road, and were never quite the same again. Prepare yourself. Because after this, you may never look at a tombstone, or a passing mist, the same way again. Story 1, The Knocking After the Cemetery. I never imagined that delivering food at night would bring me to the border between reality and something beyond human understanding. Back then, I was a Grubhub driver working the night shift around the Saginaw area in Michigan. Night deliveries weren't anything special until I became familiar with Dice Road, a quiet road running along a dense forest with an old cemetery called Dice Road Cemetery. Everyone in the delivery business knew about this road. Not because it was dangerous, but because no one liked passing by it after dark. There was something eerie, unusually cold even in the middle of summer. But when winter came and snow blanketed everything, Dice Road felt completely isolated. Every time I drove by, I always felt like someone was watching from behind the trees, from the rusted iron gates of the cemetery. That night, around 10 p.m., I received an unusual order, a strange address, just listed as 84, Dice Road. I hesitated because I couldn't remember any house around there. But well, another order, a few extra bucks didn't want to turn it down. I turned on the map, the car rolled into the quiet white fog. As I got closer to the cemetery, the phone signal began to flicker. The GPS screen blinked for a while before freezing. I decided to rely on my memory, hoping it was just a house hidden behind the trees. However, when I arrived, I only saw the old iron gate leading into Dice Road Cemetery. No house. No street lights. No lights from any nearby houses. Just the faint cemetery looming behind the thick snow. And then, I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. A sound so soft it seemed like an illusion. A light knock, rhythmic, coming from the rusted gate. I froze in the car, my hands still on the wheel, my eyes locked on that gate. My heart started pounding. I turned on the car's headlights, nothing but snow and rusted iron. I told myself it was just a branch falling or the wind hitting the gate. But a part of me wasn't sure. A moment later, when the knocking stopped, I was about to turn the car around when my phone powered off. No warning. No low battery. Just, off. And my car blinked its lights a few times before falling into silence. No signal. No GPS. No lights. Just me and Dice Road Cemetery. I sat motionless in the car. Everything outside was covered in the gray ash of snow and mist. No sound, no sign of life. The silence was so heavy it made my skin crawl. Then, the knocking came again. Knock, knock. But this time, not from the gate. I turned to look behind me. Nothing. The back door was closed, and the delivery bag was still there. I stepped outside, my feet sinking deep into the thick snow. The cold seeped into my bones. The air was heavy, like lead. I cautiously moved toward the cemetery gate, the flashlight from my phone now inexplicably rebooted flickering across the gravestones covered in snow. A few were leaning, some nearly buried. The knocking stopped when I got close to the gate. I swallowed, eyes not leaving the cold iron bars. I pressed my ear against the bars. Nothing. Complete silence. Only the sound of the wind whispering in my ear. As I turned to leave, there was a scratchy sound like nails scraping against the car window. I jerked my head to look at my car. No one. But the lights inside suddenly turned on, as if someone had just opened the door, then turned off immediately. I ran back toward the car. The door was still locked. No signs of forced entry. But on the windshield, 3 strange marks. Like someone had placed their cold fingers on it, leaving clear, faint streaks. I wiped them off. Then sat back in the driver's seat. Before starting the engine, I glanced back at the cemetery, and saw the iron gate slightly ajar. I was sure it was closed when I got close. How could that rusty hinge open by itself? My heart raced. I tried to start the car. The first time it revved but didn't start. The second time silent. The third time, the car shook lightly, and the engine came on. I sighed with relief. But just as I lifted my foot off the brake to reverse, I heard the knocking again. Not from the front. Not from behind. But right beside my left ear. The knocking came from the driver's side window where I was sitting. I whipped around, seeing no one. But the window had condensation. And this time, the handprint was clearer, like someone had pressed their hand against the glass, leaving the 5 finger marks as if someone was trying to reach in. A chill ran down my spine. I reached under the seat, grabbing the small self-defense knife I always kept with me. Not to use, but as a way to calm myself. I looked outside. The snow was still falling. But this time, through the white mist near the cemetery, something moved. Not an animal. Not a person. A figure, standing still between 2 gravestones. Faint, but clearly human-shaped. I stared. The figure didn't move. But I swear something in my head screamed. A feeling like I was being watched. As if it was looking at me. I gripped the steering wheel tightly and quickly reversed. As soon as I hit the gas, the car lights flickered again and I clearly saw in the rear-view mirror, the figure was approaching the gate. Its face was unclear but its hand was raised, like signaling for me to stop. I floored the gas pedal, speeding away from the cemetery. My heart pounded in my chest. I dared not look back. I dared not think about what might be following me. When the car left Dice Road, everything suddenly returned to normal. The phone had signal. The GPS worked. The car was running smoothly. But when I looked at my phone screen, a notification popped up, Order 84, Dice Road not delivered. I opened the orders page to confirm and saw the recipient's name, Marjorie K. I shuddered because I remembered hearing that name before, but I couldn't recall from where. I went home, unable to sleep that night. The next morning, after calming down, I searched for the address 84, Dice Road. There was no house there. Only a record showing this was the site of a house burned down in 1975. And in that fire, 3 people had died. I looked up the cemetery's archives and what I found made my blood run cold. The third name on the list of buried people was Marjorie K. Winslow. Date of death, December 1975. I looked back at the order time from the previous night. It was the same day. I never delivered near Dice Road again. I've asked myself many times, was it just a coincidence? Could the Grubhub system have malfunctioned? Maybe I was too tired and imagined everything? But the handprints on the window, what about those? The gate opening by itself? The figure standing in the mist? The feeling that someone wanted the delivery? I don't have the answers. But I know one thing for sure: that night, I wasn't alone on Dice Road. And if you, for some reason, ever pass by Dice Road Cemetery, listen carefully when you hear the knock. Soft. Very soft. Because sometimes, someone is still waiting for their delivery. Story 2, Sarah's Camera. My name is Sarah. I am a senior photography major at a small university in Michigan. I've always been drawn to decaying, desolate scenes, what I call decaying beauty. So when my professor assigned a photo project on the stillness in time, I immediately thought of Dice Road Cemetery. It was almost forgotten. A small cemetery in a desolate area, no one maintained it, no one visited, except for a few strange photographers like me. I drove there one June afternoon. The weather wasn't too hot, with a thin layer of clouds hovering like smoke, making everything appear still as death. No sound. Grass reached knee-height. The gravestones were tilted, covered in moss and cracks like crow's feet. I set up my tripod, adjusted the ISO, aperture, and angle. Everything felt like a regular practice session. I pressed the shutter, occasionally using the timer to capture photos of me standing between the old graves, symbolizing the fleeting presence of mankind. At that moment, I didn't notice anything unusual. No wind, no birds, no people. Just the steady clicking of the camera. After shooting, I packed up and left. Things started when I developed the photos. In the darkroom, as the first photo began to emerge on the paper, I froze. In the bottom left corner of the photo, right where I was standing, there was a faint figure. Tall, wearing a hat or a hooded coat. I thought I had accidentally captured a passerby or it was some light effect. I checked the EXIF file, there was no one in the frame. And I was sure the cemetery had been empty at the time. The second photo. Still me, standing between two gravestones. But this time, the figure was standing much closer. Right behind my left shoulder. A chill ran down my spine. With every subsequent photo, the figure got closer, even though the camera was on a timer, and I stood still in one place. But it changed position in every frame. I couldn't explain it. I couldn't deny it. I didn't add anything to the photos. I didn't edit them. There was no one there. I sent the photos to my professor. He only replied with one line. You should check if anyone went with you that day. I had gone alone. Completely. I couldn't sleep for many nights after that. Every time I closed my eyes, I would see that figure standing behind me, motionless. No face, no movement, just standing there. I decided to return to Dice Road Cemetery, partly out of curiosity, partly to prove I wasn't crazy. This time, I brought a video camera mounted on my chest, a mini GoPro. That day, it was hot, temperatures reaching nearly 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Yet when I entered the cemetery, a cold breeze swept across the back of my neck as if someone had just passed by. I turned around, no one. I tried to stay calm and continued walking around the graves, recording footage. Several times the camera lens fogged up suddenly, as if there was moisture covering it, though the weather was completely dry. Then, I heard footsteps. Light. Very light. Stepping on dry leaves. Behind me. I spun around, nothing. But in that moment, my heart raced uncontrollably. I could feel something was watching me. Not from in front of me, but from behind my neck. I slowly turned my head, no one. Just then, my chest-mounted camera fell to the ground. I hadn't touched it. The strap was intact. I bent down to pick up the camera, my hands trembling. I didn't want to stay a moment longer. When I got home, I checked the footage. The first part was stable. Very clear footage. but at the 23-second mark of the 7th minute, I froze. The camera was panning horizontally. Then suddenly jolted, as if someone had pulled the camera. In that moment, just before the camera fell, a face appeared at the edge of the frame. Dark, no eyes, no mouth. Just a black, empty space covered in darkness, as if the face had been erased from reality. And it was right behind me. Less than a step away. I rewound and rewound, still the same image. It couldn't be a glitch. Not dust. Nothing else, but something present. I sat motionless in the dark for hours. I turned off all the lights. I didn't dare look in the mirror. I didn't dare turn my head. I never returned to the cemetery. I moved out of the dorms and into a small apartment near school. But things didn't stop there. Some nights, while editing photos in my room, the lights would suddenly flicker, not due to power issues, but exactly like in the video footage that day. Some nights, while I was sleeping, I'd hear a faint buzzing sound like an old camera starting up. But I didn't have any equipment in the bedroom. I took the original photos and video to several experts. No one found any technical issues or signs of tampering. I couldn't bring myself to watch that footage again. But I didn't delete it either. Part of me was afraid that if I deleted it, it would find a way to come back. Part of me needed it as a reminder that while light can capture everything, some things should never be seen. Candle, do you think Sarah truly saw something? Was it a remnant of energy from a place long forgotten, or just a reflection of the obsession she created? If this story gave you chills, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share so more people can hear these spine-tingling tales. Story 3, The Party Underground. Hi everyone, I'm Logan, a vlogger who explores abandoned places and strange legends. Over the years, I've visited countless cemeteries and places rumored to have paranormal activity. But there's one trip I'll never forget. Last month, 3 friends and I decided to take on a ghost night challenge, spend the night in one of the oldest cemeteries in the region, Dice Road Cemetery. This place is infamous for strange sounds at night, rumored to come from beneath the ground, like someone's throwing a party down there. Sounds ridiculous, right? But after that night, I'm no longer sure what I believe. Let me tell you what happened. Night fell, and we set up our tents near the cemetery gate, preparing our GoPro cameras. The atmosphere was seriously eerie, autumn chill in the air, and thick fog slowly blanketing the graves. That night, we planned to film a spooky vlog, hoping something strange would happen. At first, everything seemed fine. We laughed, joked, and talked around the campfire. But as the night deepened, the air grew heavier. I couldn't explain it, but an uncomfortable feeling started to take over. After about an hour around the fire, we heard something strange. Music like classical strings and violins echoing faintly from beneath the ground. At first, I thought someone nearby was playing a prank with a speaker. But it wasn't that. The music was too detailed, too vivid. It wasn't from any device. And it definitely sounded like it came from deep underground, not from nearby. We all fell silent, listening. Ellie even asked, "What is that?" But no one had an answer, only the strange, ghostly melody drifting through the cold air. Then Nate, one of our group, began acting weird. He suddenly stood up and walked away silently. We thought he was going to use the bathroom, but instead, he walked straight toward a specific grave at the far end of the cemetery. We called his name, but he didn't respond. His eyes were vacant, like he was hypnotized. He kept mumbling a name, something in German. What scared me most was that Nate didn't speak German. He never had. We just stared at each other, anxiety rising. Ellie tried to calm us down, suggesting Nate might be messing with us. But I knew it wasn't a joke anymore. Nate was no longer himself. He began screaming unintelligible words, clawing at the dirt like someone possessed. "They're waiting, they've been waiting so long," he screamed. But I had no idea who they were. The air turned freezing cold. Fog rolled in fast, covering the entire cemetery like a dark shroud. Ellie began to panic, shouting for Nate to stop. I stood frozen as he threw himself against the grave, mumbling that old, forgotten name. We couldn't stay calm anymore. We ran, leaving behind everything, including the cameras still recording. We didn't dare return until daylight. When we did, we found the camera exactly where we left it, still recording. Watching the footage later, I couldn't believe what I saw. There was Nate, sitting by the grave. But in one corner of the frame, a shadow. Not shaped like a person. Just a dark figure, still and silent, staring straight at the camera like it knew it was being watched. We never figured out what happened. The police found nothing unusual. Nate was found 2 days later, 5 miles away, wandering along a highway. No memory of what happened. But I can't forget that shadowy figure. It still haunts me every night. One thing's for sure, not everything we see can be explained. Have you ever felt like someone's watching you, even when no one's there? Leave a comment, and if you want more stories like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Don't miss what I've got coming next. Story 4, The Axe in the Woods. There are times when city life suffocates you, when it feels impossible to find a space of your own to breathe freely. Marcus, a middle-aged man, had grown weary of the constant noise, the blinding lights, and the claustrophobia of urban life. He needed quiet, solitude, a place where only nature and ancient trees would keep him company. So he set out to camp in an isolated forest near Dice Road, a forgotten area where he could leave everything behind and live like someone else, if only for a little while. No one knew much about the forest. Rumors whispered that it had once been a graveyard. But that eerie solitude only drew Marcus in deeper. He pitched his tent in a place few would find unless they already knew the way. But what Marcus didn't expect was the nightmare that would begin in the very place he sought peace. On his first night, Marcus tried to relax, letting his body sink into the wilderness. The air was fresh, the silence nearly absolute, only the occasional chirp of a night bird broke the stillness. He sat by his campfire, sipping a beer, trying to unwind after the long drive. Then he heard it. The sharp, unmistakable sound of wood being split thunk. Then another. An axe. Clean, forceful blows echoing through the trees. It wasn't far. It was close, too close. As if someone was chopping wood right outside his tent. He looked around, flashlight in hand, but saw nothing, only shadows cast by the flickering firelight. He tried to reason with himself. Maybe it was just branches creaking, or some natural sound of the forest. But then came another chop. Clearer. Stronger. Each blow was deliberate. Rhythmic. Someone or something was definitely there, just beyond the edge of his vision. Marcus stood up and cautiously approached the source of the sound. But there was no one. Only darkness, thick and absolute. Yet the chopping continued, out of reach, just beyond sight. The next morning, Marcus couldn't shake the events of the night. He began searching the trees near his camp, looking for anything that could explain the sounds. That's when he saw it, an old tree with a fresh axe mark carved deep into the bark. The wound looked new, as if it had been made just hours ago. But that wasn't what chilled him. Scrawled just above the gash, written in what looked like fresh blood, were the words, "Get out." Marcus froze. The blood was real. It hadn't dried completely. This wasn't a prank. This was a message. Panic swelled in his chest. Who had done this? And why? He tried to stay calm, convincing himself it could have been some twisted joke. But the dread in his gut told him otherwise. This wasn't just weird. It was wrong. Very, very wrong. By the third night, something in the air had changed. The forest felt heavy. Suffocating. Marcus couldn't shake the sensation that someone was watching him. He sat up, turned on his flashlight, and scanned the darkness. Nothing. Stillness. But then, just at the edge of his vision movement, a figure. Pale, faint, drifting through the trees. Dressed in old-fashioned clothes, with a gleaming axe strapped to its back. But its movements were wrong, silent, gliding, as if its feet never touched the ground. Marcus blinked. His heart pounded. The figure drifted between the trees, keeping its distance yet clearly approaching him. He was frozen, breath shallow, unable to move. Then it stopped. Silence thickened. The figure turned not directly facing him, but its gaze pierced him, like it could see straight into his soul. And then it vanished, fading into the dark. Marcus collapsed to his knees, trembling, unable to breathe. The next morning, Marcus didn't hesitate. He packed up, left everything behind, and drove away from the forest, barely daring to look back. But the memory of the figure haunted him. As he drove, he turned on the radio. A news story played, sending chills down his spine. In 1973, a lumberjack disappeared near Dice Road. Police suspected him in the murders of two others, but his body was never found. Locals believe he buried himself deep within the woods. Marcus gripped the steering wheel. That forest, that exact spot, was where he had camped. Was the figure he saw the missing lumberjack? If so, why now? Why him? And what about the axe? The weapon tied to that dark history? Was it coincidence? Or was it something far more terrifying, a warning from the past? This story leaves one question echoing in your mind: are these just coincidences, or is there truly something out there watching, waiting in the dark? Have you ever had a strange, unexplainable experience while camping or traveling? Ever felt like you weren't truly alone? Tell us in the comments. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chilling tale. And remember, the darkness often holds more than just shadows. Story 5, Footsteps in the Fog. As an Uber driver, I often find myself driving through the night, ferrying passengers from desolate, shadowy places back home. Especially along Dice Road, a stretch no one dares to traverse after dark. It's eerily quiet, grim, and feels like it never ends. But I, Mark, a seasoned Uber driver, am used to it. Each night, my car cuts through the thick fog, guided only by the soft hum of the engine and the faint glow of distant streetlights. But one night, around 2 a.m., I received a strange ride request. A passenger, face obscured beneath a hooded coat, climbed into my car. Not a word spoken, not even a greeting. Only a small piece of paper was handed to me, bearing 3 chilling words: Dice RD Cemetery. And that was when the nightmare began. Mark started the car and drifted through empty streets, darkness enveloping everything, with only dim streetlights cutting through the void. Nothing seemed out of place, until he noticed the disturbing silence from the back seat. The passenger remained motionless, head bowed, his figure blurred further by the light hitting the coat. Suddenly, a soft moan echoed from the back. Mark didn't dare turn around immediately. The sound didn't feel human, more like a sigh from a restless spirit. Mustering courage, he looked back. The seat was empty. Nobody was there. His heart pounded. Was the sound real, or just his imagination in this shadowy space? But then he noticed something peculiar. The passenger's coat was still there untouched, yet it seemed as if something invisible had shifted in the seat. A chill radiated from the back, spreading rapidly, like a presence was sitting there, unseen but undeniable. Trying to steady himself, Mark accelerated, hoping to outrun the growing dread. Then, out of nowhere, cold air surged into the car. The temperature dropped, and fog formed on the inside of the windshield. Mark squinted. Letters were forming in the condensation. Blurry but readable. "I haven't found peace." He stared at them. Impossible, he thought. No one touched the glass, no one even moved. He glanced back, the passenger still sat in silence. Could they have written that? Or, was someone outside the car responsible? He wiped the windshield frantically, but the letters reappeared every time. It was like they were burned into the fog itself. And then, one thought echoed in his head. Who is writing on my windshield? The pressure in the car was suffocating, as if some invisible force was tightening its grip on his mind. Mark raced toward the cemetery, desperate to finish the ride. As the car came to a stop at the gate, an overwhelming heaviness filled the air. Suddenly, the car door flung open. No one stepped out. The silence was haunting. Mark turned to the dash cam footage. What he saw froze his blood. Muddy footprints, fresh and clear, led from the car to the cemetery. Footsteps, without a person. The tracks couldn't belong to anyone else, they were too fresh, too defined. Yet no one had left the vehicle. His mind spiraled. Was this real? Was he losing his grip on reality? He turned to glance at the empty back seat, and instantly felt someone behind him. The next morning, Mark checked his trip history. There was no record of the ride. He contacted Uber support. They confirmed, no such trip had ever been logged. Confused and disturbed, Mark returned to his car. And there, inside, the muddy footprints were still there. Deep, wet stains on the floor mat. They weren't his. No one had exited the vehicle. And yet the prints remained. Did Mark truly encounter something beyond explanation? Or was it just a psychological breakdown from staring too long into the night? Did this story send chills down your spine? Was it just trauma, or is there something in the dark manipulating these midnight rides? What do you think happened to Mark? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and if you've ever faced something you can't explain, don't hesitate to share it with us. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to join us for more chilling and mysterious stories. Because the mysteries never end. Thank you for following this story. Don't forget to keep joining us on more unexpected and chilling journeys. Thank you for staying with us through today's chilling stories. We hope you've felt the suspense, tension, and terrifying details that we've shared. Stories like The Voice in the Drain, The Forgotten Attic, The Last Stop Motel, the axe in the woods, and footsteps in the fog all have one common theme: sometimes, the strange and unexplained things lurking around us are the scariest, and the secrets hidden in the dark are just waiting to be revealed. If you feel these stories were too creepy or haunting, don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss out on more terrifying stories that will be released every week. Be sure to turn on notifications, so you'll know exactly when our next video drops. Maybe the next one will keep you awake, too scared to step outside at night. And if you've ever experienced something strange, a haunting encounter, or an unexplained event that left you terrified, don't hesitate to share your story with us. Send it to the channel or leave a comment below this video. Your stories might be featured in one of our future videos. Remember, not everything in the darkness is just imagination. Maybe you've already been a part of a chilling tale that's yet to be told. Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you in the next terrifying story. Don't forget to hit subscribe and brace yourself, because the darkness is about to return.